5 reasons not to move to Mexico. I'm making this video because I would have wanted this video when I was deciding whether to move to Mexico or not. I think a lot of guys on YouTube, on Twitter, etc., posting content about Mexico only to speak about the positives. So I'm trying to give you a realistic view of what it's really going to be like living in Mexico. I'm not trying to sell you anything. We do have a company that helps people get residence permits all over the world in many different countries, from Argentina, Paraguay, over to Europe, over to Asia, etc. And Mexico is just one of those countries that we offer. But it's a place that I really love, but I do think there's some issues with it. So number one is safety. And I think this is people's main concern when moving to Mexico. You hear stuff about the cartels, you hear stuff about violence, etc. on the news. But really my experience in Mexico has been great. I haven't felt unsafe once. I actually felt more unsafe in the US. And Mexico is exactly like the US. In the US, you have cities, you have parts of cities, you have neighborhoods that you wouldn't go to because it's dangerous. It's the exact same in Mexico. And all the tourist areas that you want to visit, or the areas of expats, etc., that you actually want to live in or visit, are very, very safe. So, for example, that photo there is Roma Norte in Mexico City. It's this entire neighborhood that looks exactly like Europe. If you were there, you literally feel like you're in Spain or France. And it's full of people walking their dogs, full of, hipster cafes, high-end restaurants, etc. It's a super nice neighborhood, and it really does feel like Europe. All across Mexico, there's a bunch of really safe cities. It's just, I wouldn't recommend people, if someone's there telling you, hey, go live in this city right next to the American border and it's a dangerous city, I really wouldn't recommend that. And, when I'm in Mexico, I'm usually in the south of the country or in the capital or on the Pacific coast, etc. I'm not in these dangerous cities that people talk about. And I've had, an amazing experience in Mexico. So number 2 is the language barrier. And this is something that actually shocked me when I first went to Mexico, was how little people speak English. Considering that Mexico literally borders the US, it's really surprising how little people speak English. Obviously, if you go on vacation and you're in a resort, or you're in a touristic place, they're going to speak English. Or, for example, if you're in Mexico City, young, educated people do speak English very well. But if you're in a rural part of the country, or, just like a average supermarket or something, the likelihood that someone speaks English is pretty low. There'll usually be at least one person in the store, but it's a bit of a hassle. So I would really recommend learning Spanish. And I think Spanish is a very easy language to learn. I've tried to learn other languages in the past, and Spanish is by far the easiest. And also, even if you don't want to get to fluency, you really need just a very small vocabulary to get around. And you just need to learn, how to speak to people in a store, how to order something in a restaurant. You can literally learn these things in a week if you put some effort in and download an app. So step 3 is bureaucracy. And this is something where it's actually really surprising. Some things take much longer than the US to get done, and some things are way, way quicker than the US. But the thing about Mexico is, you can't just walk into, let's say you want to get a driver's license. You can't just walk in and try to get one straight away. You have to really do research about how to do it, which specific driving center will do it, and whatever. It's a headache. So that's why, for example, choosing a service like ours, or whoever you choose to help you get residence, or to help you, buy a property or get a driver's license or buy a vehicle, is just it saves so many headaches, because, for example, we know the process inside and out. We can get it done extremely quickly. And just, this is something in general for Latin America. And that's one of the reasons why I started the company that I currently run, is because it's just so much government bureaucracy that it was incredibly hard for me to do it myself. And, most of the information online, everyone was saying contradicting things, things that weren't true. And you get guys trying to charge you for a guide. And it's just I just want to give people the information, let them decide. And if they want to move to Mexico, cool. If they don't, they don't. There's no point trying to, sell people a fake dream and then they get there and they actually hate it. You might as well give people the truth. So the 4th one is infrastructure. Obviously in Mexico, you're not going to be taking high-speed trains between cities like you can in Europe, but it's also the same for the US, right? Like if you want to get around Mexico long distance, you really do have to fly or take a bus, but I don't think many people like taking 20-hour buses. So you're forced to fly, and sometimes, these flights will have to do a layover in Mexico City, or it's like it's with some really, really bad airlines in Mexico for domestic flights, like some of the worst experiences I've ever had. So when I go to Mexico, I really just fly into Mexico and then out of Mexico. I don't travel around long, like in the Yucatan and Quintana Roo, like that area is completely fine. You can get around within like 1 to 2 hours. They also have a train down there now. But outside of there, let's say you want to get from Mexico City to Puerto Vallarta or Mexico City down to Cancun, it's just like you're just going to want to fly. And yeah, it's just like a trade-off that you have to make, and it is pretty similar to the US in that way, where in the US you're definitely not taking high-speed trains anywhere, and if you need to get long distance, it's the same thing where you're flying or you're driving, or like worst case scenario, you take a Greyhound bus, which it's just like I don't think people like taking buses for 20 hours. So the last one is cultural differences. And this is just something that you're going to experience in any country that you move to as an expat, where, there's just going to be differences. And in Mexico, obviously, it's a much slower pace of life. People aren't as, focused on money. There's been times where, let's say you're renting an apartment and maybe the Wi-Fi, like generally in Mexico, the Wi-Fi is very, very good. But let's say you're renting an apartment from someone, the Wi-Fi was bad. And let's say it costs like, $10 extra to upgrade to the fast Wi-Fi. And if you literally say to the landlord, I'll pay the extra, or I'll even give you like $50 extra a month, they'll just be like, no, I don't want to change it. And they just don't care about money. It's just a cultural difference. But then, funnily enough, taxi drivers in Mexico really do care about money. So it really depends on who you're speaking to. But yeah, anyway, it's just a cultural difference. It's a much slower pace of life. It's a much more chilled place. And that's great for people, especially in the US with the work culture. And if you're retiring or you're a digital nomad and you work online, that might be exactly what you're looking for. But if you do want that fast-paced life, etc., you can still get it in Mexico, but only in Mexico City. I love Mexico City. For me, it's, it is a mega city. Millions and millions of people live there. Vibrant food scene, just an amazing city. It's one of my favorite cities in the entire world. And if you want a fast-paced life, you want to be doing business, meeting other entrepreneurs, being a financial hub, it's going to be Mexico City. Don't try to pick another big city in the country, because it's not going to be like being in a big Western city. Mexico City is the only one that compares. So that's basically the breakdown of the reasons why you should not move to Mexico. But obviously, most of them are very easy to overcome, or they're not actually that much of a big deal when you actually look into it. So yeah, if you do want to move to Mexico and this video didn't convince you not to move to Mexico, and you want our help, you can book a call down below if you have any questions, or you can check out our website if you want to get started straight away on your process.